sustainable building blocks made from artificial resin are challenging the construction industry. They can be taken apart and rebuilt into a new design, offering an environmentally friendly alternative to standard building bricks.
Sustainable, recyclable, and mobile. Polyblocks make real houses as easy to disassemble as children's building blocks. According to the German company Polycare, their new material could be a game changer for the construction industry.
The building blocks are not just easy to carry by hand. They also don't require motor or glue. They're simply plugged together before you insert threaded rods into the blocks, which are held together with ring anchors. That's why the construction is extremely simple.
Polymer concrete is the main component of Polycare's bricks. They're made of 90% filler from naturally occurring sands and 10% binder that replace conventional cement in the concrete. This allows for the use of local raw materials such as desert sand.
We need to always think locally. When we enter a market like Namibia or South Africa, we always find different types of sand and we need to understand them, the composition, all the way to the right balance for the recipe.
The company has already constructed around 100 homes in Namibia. According to media reports, a second Polycare production site opened in the summer of 2019. The Polycare system is more suitable for drier regions. That's because wetness and humidity require a higher expenditure to keep the raw materials dry. The company's COO says their idea was first kicked into action in 2010.
The impetus came following the catastrophe in Haiti, when our founders thought about how we could radically change the construction process and enable people to build homes themselves with local products.
Polycare will profit from providing building block factories and licensing fees, with the possibility of selling building kits in the future.
A Japanese architect is following in his father's footsteps by designing the aquatic center for the Tokyo Olympics this year. His father was one of the most famous architects of the 20th century and the designer of the swimming venue for the 1964 Tokyo Olympics.
63-year-old Japanese architect Paul Noritaka Tange is carrying on his father's legacy after winning the rights to design the aquatic center for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. His father, Kenzo Tange, was a revolutionary architect who designed the swimming venue for Asia's first Olympics in Tokyo in 1964. I wanted to tell my father that I had grown enough to do this. I believe we're the only father and son in the world to design the same Olympics venue, and a strong feeling of respect for my father is also part of the reason why I wanted to do it. Upon completing his studies in Switzerland and at Harvard, the young architect joined his father's firm in 1985. For decades, the two worked and built together. He says his father was a workaholic, often late for dinner. When we were at meals, all the talk was about architecture. Through this kind of experience, I started to feel like it's natural to become an architect. The bold floating roof inspires the father designed for the 1964 Games evoke Japanese temples and suspension bridges. They serve as a symbol of Japan's triumphant return to the world stage after the defeat in World War II. But this year, as the country comes under pressure from the economic downturn and the pandemic, reuse and sustainability become the mantras for the son's design. For the new venue, he combines principles he learned from his father with lines reminiscent of a bamboo forest. Gradually, I came to see my father as the master, and I never have seen him as a rival. My father was a mentor to me, so I think it's difficult to exceed him. The father was also the designer of Japan's Hiroshima Peace Museum and the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building. He died in 2005 at age 91.
2,000 years ago in ancient Rome, it's where wild animals were held and gladiators prepared for battle. Now, for the first time, the tunnels under the Colosseum are open to the public. NTD's El Rhodes brings us this report.
The heart of Rome's Colosseum opened for the first time to the public on Friday. It's an intricate system of underground passageways, cages and rooms where prisoners, animals and gladiators waited to enter the arena. It follows a 2-year-long renovation project. A new 160-metre walkway opens up an area of the monument that has never been accessible to visitors before. Work on the labyrinth that lays below the arena took 2 years, with more than 80 people, including archaeologists, architects and engineers, working on the 15,000 square metre site. Built 2,000 years ago, the stone arena was the biggest amphitheatre in the Roman Empire. It used to have up to 70,000 seats and hosted gladiator fights, executions and animal hunts. It could also be filled with water to reenact sea battles. It's now Italy's most popular tourist attraction, drawing over 7 million visitors in 2019. The renovation of the tunnels is the second part of a 3-stage process that started 8 years ago. Italian fashion company Tod's Group pledged over £20 million to pay for the project.
Telling the story of the Colosseum and its renovation brings back to the center of attention a monument that the whole world loves, that represents not only Rome, but all of Italy in the world.
The first phase of the makeover, including a clean-up of the facade, was unveiled in 2016. The final phase involves renewing the galleries, the lighting system, and creating a new visitors' centre. The project is set to be completed in about 3 years. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
After 15 years of closure, a major department store in Paris reopened this week. But it will take time to get Parisians and tourists back. NTD's Joanne Robson brings us more on this.
150-year-old La Samaritaine is ready to welcome Parisians and tourists again. The department store opened on Monday after a 7-year makeover. French President Emmanuel Macron and France's richest man, LVMH chief Bernard Arnault, unveiled the revamped building.
I think this opening of La Samaritaine by DFS is an incredible message to the world that, COVID is going to be behind us.
La Samaritaine is famed for its 1920s era building and gilded Art Deco facade. But the revamped store will include an airport-style moving walkway. Facing competition from online retailers, department stores had wanted to reinvent themselves as day-trip destinations, even before the pandemic hit. The crisis forced several prestigious names to file for bankruptcy. For most businesses that were forced to close in France, it will take time to recover their losses.
If you read at the projections for airline international travel, I think that it's between the end of this year to maybe the first or second quarter of next year that we'll see a good return to normalcy.
La Samaritaine expects around 5 million visitors a year when things go back to normal. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
When author Charlie Corbett faced some of his darkest moments, he found hope in the song of a skylark. NTD's Jane Worrell finds out how the natural world helped Corbett cope with his mother's death.
Hi Charlie, so you've written about how bird songs helped you cope with the news of your mother's death. Can you tell me about that?
First real awakening for me properly about the healing power of nature was shortly after my mother's diagnosis with terminal cancer. And as I say, nobody prepares you for receiving bad news. There's no training for that. And I was a bit numb and lost and took myself off for a very long walk, not really knowing what to think, and lay down on one of the hillsides near where I live. And just, I think it was a light drizzle falling, and I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. But a skylark began to sing, and a skylark is a bird of open ground, of farmland, and it started hovering 60 or 70 feet above my head, singing on the wing. They're one of the few birds that sings on the wing, and this cascading, beautiful series of notes kind of floated down over me, and it was like a sort of injection of neat hope, I would say, to the soul. And it was the first time I thought to myself, when was the last time I sat and just listened to a bird sing? And it didn't cure cancer, it didn't resolve my problems, but what it did do was take me away from myself just for that moment and give me some kind of perspective on my life, I suppose. And that was the first real sign for me that nature could work miracles in that way.
And you've highlighted 12 birds in your book, 12 Birds to Save Your Life. Can you tell me a bit about those birds? You just mentioned the skylark.
Well, each bird has a special meaning for me, and it's a book about 12 birds and 12 months of my life. So from my mother's diagnosis through to her death and the aftermath. And all of these birds have some special meaning to me. And what I wanted to do with the book was, help people to relate. Often we see nature in the abstract. So I chose birds, for example, the skylark, obviously on that damp hill in my lowest moments. And the song thrush is another one that I adore the song thrush because it's one of the few birds that sings in winter. And it was the depths of January when you're very depressed and maybe you can't sleep. And as I was back then, tossing and turning in my bed, and a song thrush started singing outside my window. Now, you have a choice. You can either lob a brick at it and complain and say, I can't sleep, or you can let that song roll over you. And nature does stuff to you that you don't know it's doing. And the thing about the song thrush particularly is that it's a loud, persistent, cheerful song at the darkest hour. And as Thomas Hardy said years ago, it takes a romantic poet or a writer to really get to the bottom of this. We have become, as a species, I believe, dislocated from our natural environment. I travelled the world, working as a journalist in cities all across the world, came back home to the farm where I grew up and realised I'd forgotten everything. And this book is about my journey of reconnection, but also about how these different birds and the wrens, tiny little birds, wrens, little cocktail, if you have a bad winter, 25% of them can die, but they huddle together in winter. They go and find little nooks and crannies, and you'll go find 10 wrens all snuggled in your garden wall together for warmth. And I think it teaches us lessons about life, everyday nature, and it gives you that perspective, no longer the lead role in your own private melodrama, as I say in the book, but merely a bit part in nature's great epic that's going on all around me now. I can hear the pigeons and the blackbirds and the wrens singing cheerfully, and the odd tractor, which I apologise for.
No problem, I did just see the wheels going past just now. Well, thank you very much.
Well, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Leith. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.